Hello, welcome, folks. As you join, welcome. Thank you for joining. And as you join, please introduce yourself. Drop your name into the chat box. Set your settings on it to all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see. And we'll just get started in a second. Welcome to the show. This is going to be really fun talking about Florida, everybody's favorite state. And again, for those who are just joining, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat box, name, where you're from, if you're running for something, and make sure that you set your settings to all panelists and attendees. And we will get started, and we will get this party started in just one moment. I wish I had like a music button. And just so folks know, we're working on our Facebook. We're getting the Facebook Live set up. So as soon as that launches, we're going to get this party started. And for folks, if you can hear stuff in the background, I live on a street. You can hear stuff. I also have a dog and 2 cats, and they make a lot of noise. So one of them might make a guest appearance on this. So just a reminder for folks as you join to drop in the chat box that what your name is, where you're from, if you're running for something. Make sure to set your settings to all panel attendees. We're just working out 1 or 2 minor kinks in the technology, and then we'll get this party started. I should be ready to do some singing and dancing here. I wish I was more multi-talented. All right. Well, I think while we're getting this worked out, we'll just get this party started. And then when our friends on Facebook join, our friends on Facebook will join. So first of all, thank you everyone for joining tonight. I'm really excited. This has been a really amazing series that we've been doing. The Unapologetically Progressive series was largely the idea of one of our amazing staff members, Marcia Gonzalez, who's running all of the back end on the call tonight. She's amazing. And I'm really glad that we were able to do this and make sure that our candidates had the opportunity to talk with folks about sort of their vision for their different states. We've done these in Texas, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Florida, and we've been really, really excited. They've all been really great. I've cried during probably most of them. So I just want to start by thanking Marcia and the team who made this possible. For those who don't know me, my name is Ross Morales Rocketto. I'm one of the co-founders of Run for Something. And for those who aren't totally sure about what Run for Something is, we recruit and support young, diverse, progressive folks who are running for state and local office for the first or second time. We do, as I said, 2 specific things. We recruit people, which is we go out into communities and try to find people to run for office. We have a list of over 60,000 people who've told us that they are interested in running for office all across the country in all 50 states. It's really been quite amazing to watch that grow from the very beginning when Amanda, my co-founder, and I thought that Run for Something was going to be nothing more than a side hustle. We thought if we were lucky, maybe 100 people would sign up in the first year. It turned out in the first day, 1,000 people signed up in the first few weeks. a few thousand more. In the first few months, we had 10,000, and now we're at over 60. So we're really excited. We also work directly with candidates to support them. So we've so far, since Run for Something started, endorsed more than 1,500 candidates. We've endorsed over 650 in the 2020 election cycle, and over 500 of those folks are going to have elections in November. So we're really, really excited to be doing this work and working with some really amazing people. I also, before we sort of like jump right in, I want to like thank our host committee who made this whole thing possible. Leslie Beamer Wegner, Chelsea Mason, Trisha O'Neill, Barbara Friedengood, Rob Joyce, Connor Bronson, Nick Edwards, Christy Edgar, Marjorie Sue, Victoria Smith, Sarah Kuntz, John Hegman, Artine Arbishashi, Tracy Lear, and Virginia Allison. And with that, you guys like didn't like show up to listen to me talk. So I'm going to try to minimize the amount that I speak as much as possible. I'd like to introduce our first guest here, Lauren Baer. Lauren is amazing, and actually the organization that she founded, More Like America PAC, is actually one of our really good partners. More Like America is making investments in underrepresented candidates, running in a handful of states across the country. We're really proud to be partnering with Lauren on this work. She's a really impressive person herself. She served for 6 years as an official in the Obama administration as a senior advisor for Secretaries of State Hillary Clinton and John Kerry, and then U.S. Ambassador to the UN Samantha Power. In 2018, she was the Democratic nominee for U.S. Congress in Florida's 18th Congressional District, and was one of the earliest candidates placed on the DCCC's Red to Blue list. She's a staunch advocate for diversity in politics and LGBTQ rights. Lauren sits on the Board of Trustees for the Florida Democratic Party, the Jewish Democratic Council of America, Next Gen Leadership Council, and the LGBTQ Victory Fund Campaign Board. And with that, I'm going to kick it to Lauren to talk a little bit about the work that she's doing, what it was like when she was a candidate running for office, and all sorts of other fun stuff. So Lauren, take it away.
Thanks so much for that kind intro, Ross. I am super excited to be here tonight and get the chance to talk about three things that I really love: Florida, progressive politics, and down ballot races. So as Ross mentioned, my name is Lauren Baer, and I am the founder of More Like America. Our organization, our mission is really pretty simple. We work to elect candidates at the federal, state, and local level who are more reflective of the diverse communities that they serve. And I know that the work our organization is doing is important because, as Ross mentioned, I was a candidate myself, and particularly someone who is running for office who doesn't look or think like most of the people we've elected in our country's history. Back in 2018, I ran for Congress in Florida's 18th district. So for all the Floridians on the call, that's the district that's northern Palm Beach County, Martin County, and St. Lucie County. And every day that I was on the campaign trail, I was just acutely aware that I wasn't like most of the candidates who'd come before me. So I was a woman, I was the mother of a very young child, I was a member of the LGBTQ community. And, my experience was that made people ask this pesky question. And that question was like, are you electable? So that question, that seed of doubt, it does something to a candidacy. It affects how much money you can raise. It affects the institutional support and endorsements that you can receive. It affects how your campaign is written about, how it's spoken about. And sometimes it even affects how people vote. So at the end of my race, we came close. We actually won more votes than any Democrat ever had in the 18th district in a midterm election, but I lost. And I came out of that campaign with this really acute understanding about how both conscious and unconscious bias affected not only my own race, but every race where the person on the ballot was a woman, a person of color, or a member of the LGBTQ community. And so I quite simply committed to doing something about it. And that's why I founded More Like America. What we do is essentially very complementary to what Run for Something does. And that's why we're so excited that they're one of our partners. We step in and we provide financial support to candidates. We do it early and we do it often so that more diverse candidates get into the arena and so they can win their races. And this year, I'm really proud that one of our areas of focus is state legislative races in Florida. So you might be wondering, if you're on this call, why in Florida, where there is so much attention on the presidency, should we care about down ballot races? So I'm going to give you 4 quick reasons. The first is that down ballot races are going to help us win the presidency. When you have good candidates on the local level, what they do is they generate excitement. They build organizing capacity. They help get voters to the polls. And that benefit, it doesn't trickle down, it trickles up. It helps people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris win 2 weeks from now. Second thing that down ballot candidates are going to help us do in Florida is regain control of the state. It's been a long time since Dems have had control in Florida. It's been 21 years since we've had a Democratic governor, 24 years since we controlled the state house, 28 years since we controlled the state senate. Currently, we only have one statewide elected official who's a Democrat, Nikki Fried. And so what does all of this mean? It means we need to build the bench at a lower level to ensure that we have the talent and the capability to take control of the state government at the highest levels. Now, the third thing that focusing on down ballot candidates enables us to do is it enables us to get better representatives in Washington. When you look at who's representing us in DC right now, for a state that is as close and as purple as Florida, it's really off kilter. We've got 2 Republican senators. The majority of our congressional delegation is Republican as well. So if we're going to change who represents us in DC and makes federal policy for Floridians, we've also got to focus again on building the bench in down ballot races. And the final reason why I think these races are so important is because of the fact that with Republican control of absolutely everything at the state level, what happens at a local level matters more than ever. What happens in mayor's offices and school boards and county commissions, that can have a real and tangible impact on people's day-to-day lives. So these are races that we should care about. They're races that we should support. So what does that mean for you as a viewer? I'm going to say 2 things before I pass the mic on. The first is that supporting down ballot candidates is super important. It can have an outsized impact on things you care about, like the presidency and politics, but perhaps as importantly, you can have a disproportionately large impact on a down ballot race with a small donation. Let me repeat this. Your dollar will go farther contributing it to a candidate for school board or mayor or county commission than it will contributing it to a candidate for president. And related to that, supporting organizations like Run for Something and More Like America that support down ballot candidates, that matters too, because we're the folks who are out there trying to support and amplify the voices of these incredible candidates like the ones that you're hearing from. So I would encourage you to visit morelikeamerica.org if you're interested in learning more about our organization, or follow us at More Like America on Twitter and Facebook. And I am super excited to answer any and all questions that you have when we get to the Q&A portion of the event. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Really appreciate it and love that we have been able to partner on this. One thing that, the only thing I'll add to what Lauren just said is, people are voting, as the candidates on this call will talk to you about. Folks are voting in Florida right now. There's been over 3 million votes cast. And if you look at the votes as a percentage of the number of people who turned out in 2016, we're already at 32% of the total electorate from 2016. So people aren't just voting, they're voting in really large numbers right now. So with that, I'd like to introduce folks to our first candidate, Nancy Metayer. She told me how to pronounce it, and then I just messed it up. Nancy is running for Coral Springs Commissioner. She's an environmental scientist. She's a former member of the Broward County Soil and Water Conservation District. She has over a decade of public service experience, leading on issues ranging from environmental advocacy to disaster relief. She worked extensively in response to the natural disasters, a variety of natural disasters, such as Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Michael, Hurricane Dorian. Most recently, Nancy led a long-term strategic initiative with the Florida Disaster Preparedness Plan, and that focused on building disaster and community resilience in vulnerable neighborhoods across the state of Florida. And with that, I will stop talking and let Nancy talk to us a little bit about why she's running and what she's seeing right now. And Nancy, you can turn your camera on.
Thank you, Ross. And you did not pronounce my name wrong. And I appreciate you for asking. But hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Nancy Metayer, and I am a candidate for Coral Springs Commissioner Seat 3. I believe I am the best candidate, and I am running because I truly believe that it's time to move our city forward in an innovative way. I'm a product of this community. I am really, truly believe in the potential of Coral Springs. I'm running on 3 platforms: economic growth, public safety, and environmental sustainability. I want to move our city to 100% renewable energy by 2030. I want to make solar more accessible. Our city has recently suspended recycling. I want to bring that program back. I also want to ensure that our local and small businesses are able to thrive in our city, because we know when our small local businesses don't thrive, it impacts us directly. I want to generate that local economy again, especially after COVID-19. So I will be implementing a small local business preference plan where I will encourage development when developers come in and when we have majority of contracts through our city, that we look to our small businesses first before we go to outside vendors and outside companies, and also incentivize small local businesses who hire locally. Not only is this great for our environment, because folks won't have to hop on in a car and drive 40 miles east or west. They can drive about 2 minutes up the road or take public transportation. It's great for our environment, and also circulates, again, the economy in our city. That is 2 important factors and causes for me. And lastly, public safety. I really want to have real conversations around what policing looks like in our community, especially with everything that's going on nationally. I want to be very preventative and not see what's happening nationally happen in our home. I know to many folks, defunding police sounds very scary, but I also know folks who find interacting with police very scary too. And until we start having those conversations and really reimagining what policing looks like in our communities, we're still going to have that tension. So I want to work with my law enforcement as well as the community to figure out what policing and safety looks like for everyone in Coral Springs. And with that being said, I'm at the polls from between 5:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. breaking down. What I'm realizing is exactly what Ross had mentioned. A lot of people are coming out to vote in numbers. They're coming with their families. They're coming with the babies. They're coming with everybody they know. And why? Because people understand how important this election cycle is. They understand what's on the ballot. They understand that climate change is on the ballot. They understand that our rights to have full autonomy of our bodies being taken away is on the ballot. They understand immigration's on the ballot and what it means to come here and want to live a better life and live that American dream is on the ballot. So folks are not taking this lightly. They're standing in line for 2 hours at a time. They're dropping off their mail-in ballots. They're ensuring that their vote is counted. It's nice to see folks being in these lines and engaging and having real conversations, but it's also disheartening to see the tensions in these lines and how folks are attacking each other too. I've seen the pretties and the uglies. Actually, at the polling site that I was in yesterday, they're actually like police had to come out because it got really heated. So again, don't let that discourage you. Definitely go out and vote. As Lauren had said earlier, it's time to really diversify and ensure that we're building this bench, because we all bring a different perspective to the conversation. As a scientist, as a woman, as someone who wants better and wants to have beautiful Black children one day, I want to ensure that my voice is being heard and that the future generation is being protected, right? And I want pretty much what everybody else wants. I want to feel safe. I want to live in a sustainable environment. I want to know that my local economy is thriving, because that impacts me directly with my taxes. So that is why I'm running. I'm running because my parents had poured their entire life savings into this home, because this was really their first big purchase. And I want to make sure that I protect that legacy. This is something that is being handed off to me and my brothers and my sisters. They're my immigrants of Haiti. And so I understand what hard work means. I understand what it means to ensure that folks are being heard. I was taught that at a very young age. And so I can't wait to win on November 3rd with all these amazing individuals on this panel. And if I don't win, I want to ensure that I'm going to continue fighting the good fight and ensuring that our folks on the dais reflects the people of Coral Springs. And so thank you again for holding this space. I can't wait to continue digging in and having more conversations about what it means to run in Florida. Right now, it means being wet because it's raining every day. And it also means being very tired because folks are waiting in these long lines and making sure that they're making the right decisions. So thank you for having me run for something. And I can't wait to hear from the rest of the other panelists.
And thanks for being here, Nancy, especially, and for everyone else who have been out at the polls all day today. I've worked on a lot of campaigns, and I know how exhausting it is to go from polling place to polling place and getting rained on to going to an event afterwards. So, we don't have in-person events right now, at least for the most part. So, it's a little different, but it's not that different. So thank you for doing this. Next up, we have Ben Marcus. Ben is running for Florida State House, District 18. He is a small business owner. He believes in the power of community. He believes that our state legislators need to be working collaboratively with each other, with like their constituents, and not subverting, the will of local bodies. And so I'll let Ben talk more about that. And yeah, Ben, take it away.
All right, thank you very much, Ross. I appreciate you and Run for Something for holding this fantastic event, and always appreciate the platform to talk about this amazing race and the opportunities that we have here. One small correction: I'm running for Florida State House District 16, not 18. That's I believe the seat someone else was running for, who was speaking earlier, but. I believe no, it's perfectly fine, Ross. Absolutely, it's all even numbers and very close. But State House District 16 covers Southeast Jacksonville. Jacksonville and Duval County are basically the same. They are the same thing, not just basically the same thing. It's about 1 million people, and so the district kind of covers southeast part of town. It's very much a suburban part of town for all intents and purposes, and so. It's a pretty complex district to try and really unravel as a progressive and a young progressive. This has been historically a more traditionally conservative part of town, as you can imagine. However, there are significant and real pockets of economic stability in this part of town as well. Lots of young people and kind of apartment buildings that have been built up in this part of town. So it's incredibly unique and diverse in a variety of ways. So it's been an interesting challenge to unpack. Now, that being said, Jacksonville has a tradition of crossing over party lines in order to, during voting. We've had consolidated primaries, top two consolidated primaries here in Jacksonville for decades and decades. So people are used to casting their ballot for who they consider the best candidate to be, as opposed to their particular party. And so we've had a lot of great conversations down here. You know, a big issue that we're facing here in Florida, as we're facing in a lot of states around the country, but especially here in Florida, is there's extraordinary corruption in Tallahassee and at the state level and also at the local level. It's trickling its way down into the local level. And you have these major, huge major corporations, a few of which really have locked up the game in particular industries across the state of Florida, but through Tallahassee. This has caused significant issues for, you know, basically everybody who lives in the state. And so I'm extraordinarily focused on this issue of dealing with corruption and getting the system right, because I'm a big believer that if the system was right, if the rules were, you know, in place and actually fair and balanced, that the progressive message would win, you know, 7, 8, 10, you know, out of 10 times. And that's simply because I believe in people, and, you know, in this idea that people, everybody has potential, and everybody has something to offer, and very few, no one is looking for just a handout, right? And I think the language is just really messed up around this. You know, we need to be investing in people so that they can be their best selves and give back to our community and to our society and push us forward as a group. People understand that inherently, but they've been caught up in this political garbage message. And so a big part of my campaign is helping people understand that you can be a progressive and, you know, not be sucked into this craziness that so many people have been convinced of when they hear that word. So, you know, it's been a fantastic time. It's all been grassroots money. I'm one of those people who has rejected political committee money. I don't have a political committee myself. The only political committee money I've taken is from unions, local unions. And that's because those are real donations from real people. It's not being passed through 8 different places before it ends up in its final location. And so I'm a big believer, again, in really getting the system locked down and making sure that people have trust in the system and that they're really feeling like it's their government, because that's what this country was founded on. And I think it's a shame that we've fallen away from this original idea, because it's so beautiful and it's so powerful. And if we can fully embrace it as the real diverse community that we are in this country, we can be so much more. And our potential is so limited right now. So it's kind of the central message of my campaign, Ross. But I guess a little bit about myself. I'm 36. I have 3 young kids. The 2 oldest go to public school. The youngest is just about to turn 5. Will be starting kindergarten next year. You know, I've done a couple of terms of AmeriCorps over the course of my adult life. One term was City Year way back when, where I met my wife, and then another as a Vista with an organization called Year Up a few years later. I believe it was 08, 09, if I'm getting my years correctly. But you know, I'm a regular guy in the sense that we're middle class folks. You know, I've been working in nonprofits, you know, or, you know, in the kind of nonprofit arena for most of my life, although I have spent a lot of time on campaigns as well in that world as well. But that's a little bit about me. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Ben. Really appreciate it. And just so folks know, you're gonna, at the end of this, you're gonna get to do Q&A with all of the folks that we've had speaking. So if you would like, go ahead and drop any questions that you've got into the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. It looks like we've already got a question there. But yeah, if you've got stuff as it comes in or as you're listening to people talk, definitely drop a question in there. We love, the more questions, the better. With that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Luisa Santos. She is running for Miami-Dade County School Board. She's an immigrant, a former Obama administration official, a small business owner, and she's fundamentally looking to reimagine education from the ground up. So really, you know, no big deal. Luisa, all you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ross and Lauren, for doing this. I think my very first endorsement in this entire race was run for something. And I got to meet Amanda at a local event, and just literally could not have started this journey, could not imagine starting this journey without the organization. So I'm so grateful. And I think that the reason that thus far my campaign has been successful really comes from my lived experience as a student, and then being extremely intentional about being inclusive, expanding the table about who gets to participate in this process, and of course bringing new voices into the fold, which I get to do in the process as I become probably a new voice who will enter local politics at our school board level. So I came to the US when I was 8 years old from Colombia, and in our public schools, I was poured into by teachers, counselors, and so many custodians and cafeteria workers who looked out for me. And I excelled in school, and I realized junior year, when I was student government president and wanted to start a mentoring organization for the entire district, I asked my mom for my social security number, and she looked at me and she said, "You don't have one." And that is how I came to find out that I was an undocumented student in our school since I arrived in this country in 1998. And so my main takeaway from that is realizing that up to that point in our public education system, it didn't matter that I was undocumented. But in junior year, when you start applying to schools, it became very, very present and real. And it suddenly made so many things that I thought were next for me out of reach. What that also did for me is I really felt like I had no choice but to become politicized. And that began by advocating for the DREAM Act. There were a lot of student orgs of dreamers who were going through thinking about how do we build a movement that supports our right to an education, supports and highlights why we belong here, why we deserve to be here, and all that we can contribute. And so I got very involved in organizing for the DREAM Act, in support of the DREAM Act, and then of course through student government, in thinking about how I could use that platform as well to expand opportunity to all students. And I say that because so many of us sometimes view that advocacy and that grassroots movement as separate from elected office. And what I have learned is that we need more people who come from that background in elected office, because we need a lot more of that understanding and mindset of bringing people along in decision making, making no decision about us without us. And I think that's the beautiful thing about everyone that's on this call, is that we all represent constituencies that in some way or another have not been at the table in the past. And it is so powerful to lean on each other as we go through that process. And then of course, to hopefully, once we are successful in elected leadership or decide to continue to do our work through other avenues, work with each other to make everything that should exist a reality. And so for me, what does that look like at a school board level? Well, it looks like an equitable system where no matter what zip code you're born in or you live in, you have access to an excellent public school education. That's literally the reason that I am where I am, was that excellent public school education that I received in our public schools. And what I'm seeking to do in this run for office is to ensure that that opportunity is inevitable, not unlikely for most students who are in our schools today, whether they are undocumented, whether they are Black, LGBTQ+, it should not matter. And what we see, of course, today is that we have incredible achievement gaps, unfortunately, that persist to this day in Miami-Dade County public schools. I always like to use the example, one of our best middle schools has a 60 percentage point achievement gap for Black and white students in math. That's unacceptable. That is inequity in front of our eyes, yet we don't disaggregate data at a school board level. And so we don't know where those inequities exist unless we do lots and lots of digging. So that's one of the policies I've put forth. We need to disaggregate all data to truly understand where the inequities exist to be able to tackle them. And then, of course, currently, students are facing a school to prison pipeline where our Black students are 3 times more likely to be arrested for the same behavior as other peers. That's unacceptable. And as a school board member, I can begin to push forth policies that allow our students to thrive and to not face disproportionate punishment because of implicit biases that people hold. And so, being able to have those conversations that I feel are being had in progressive circles, but sometimes are not viewed in the most welcoming light in the larger bodies. For example, we had an item in our school board where one of our board members said we need to study our curriculum and understand what kind of cultural inclusivity training we have and how we talk about racism in our curriculum. Bare minimum of what should be done in our schools, and there was outrage from the community as saying like we're indoctrinating children, and I think that we need more progressive leaders in those offices to be able to talk about the issues, explain from our personal stories too why these issues matter and who they affect. A lot of times people don't even realize some of these bad policies, how many people they're affecting. And then we've got, we need to ensure that that we have an equitable school system all across. So I am excited for making it to this point in my race. I came out of a very competitive 5-way primary, and now I'm currently facing a 28-year career politician who is termed out of the county commission and jumping into school board. So this is an important race, and one of the anecdotes I'll share quickly is we've built a fellowship where we have a student fellow program and a teacher fellow program, and it has been life-changing for my campaign. We've got an incredible structure that we've built to make sure our movement is strategically growing every day. And it's been so rewarding to be able to have student and teacher voice centered in my campaign. And I'm so excited to make history as the first former Dreamer elected to office in Florida, and hopefully also the first Latina to represent District 9 on our school board. So I'm grateful to be here with all of you and so excited to answer your questions.
Well, I'm having some technical difficulties getting myself off of, getting my camera back on. So as long as folks can hear me, I'm just, oh, here we go. Finally got it. Thanks, Luisa. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to you winning. All right, last up, the last but not least, before we go into Q&A, we've got Ricky Junquera, who is running for Florida State House. Ricky is the regional press secretary for the Sierra Club. He's also a proud Cuban American son and activist. A thing that he says, which I think is just like really, really powerful, is that we are our parents' American dream, and making that a reality, folks, is a big part of why he's running. And so with that, I will let Ricky speak for himself. And thanks for being here. Go ahead.
Hey, Ross. First, I want to thank you for pronouncing my last name right. That's usually my test for people, on first meeting them. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And Ross is completely right. I got into this race because I am Cuban American, and shocker, I am also a Democrat. I come from a background here in Miami-Dade County. I come from Westchester, one of the Cuban suburbs here in the city, where it's very strongly, historically, Republican Cuban American without fail, with blinders on and not thinking issue to issue about if you should be supporting that party or not. And I tell people all the time, my grandparents immigrated to the United States from Cuba in 1961. in search of a better life for them and their kids, right? Fleeing a communist dictatorship of Fidel Castro. And my grandparents came here with one child, and that family quickly grew to four. And unfortunately, my grandmother lost my grandfather, having four young children. But she was able to support her entire family as a seamstress, making jeans on the Miami River back when we made textiles and we made clothing here in the United States. And she supported a family of five on that salary. You know, something that's unheard of today. My mother, unfortunately, was left in the same position when I was 7 years old. My father was in a car accident, and my mother was left as a single parent, raising three children, mostly on her own with the help of my grandmother. And she too tried working one job, but oftentimes had two jobs just to be able to make ends meet in the 90s. And now, unfortunately, I graduated from college in 2008 with a degree in political science during one of the worst recessions in our country's history, and couldn't find a job, with being the first in my family to obtain a college degree. And now still, you know, we're during a pandemic, such a high unemployment. People are finding it harder. Our generations are finding it harder to be able to sustain ourselves and a family on the salaries that we have. Unfortunately, here in the state of Florida, we have a very low minimum wage, and that's been a topic of conversation forever. I tell people now, you know, this pandemic has rattled us all, Democrat, Republican, and independent. You know, we are not only seeing the reality that Rick Scott left us with, which was a broken unemployment system, a system that was designed, quoted by him, to fail, to require the unemployed to seek a job as fast as possible. You know, we have one of the lowest unemployment payouts per week in the country. And it's a problem, right? People are already stressing out about being able to pay their bills without a job. You know, at the beginning, at the onset of the pandemic, we said we have to be more responsible. Our elected officials at the state level have to go up to Tallahassee and fix our unemployment system and figure out ways to help our population. Unfortunately, that went on deaf ears by the Republican majority. And then 7 months later, we're sitting in a situation now where most people did not even get unemployment benefits until month 3 of the pandemic. And still to this day, many have not received benefits going back to their date of unemployment. And what happens with that is, yes, we had a moratorium on rent and mortgages. Yes, we had a moratorium on evictions and paying of utility bills and so on and so forth. Many of those have lifted. Most of them have left families crippled with debt in a way that they've never seen in their lifetime, and others won't see in their lifetime. You know, a whole generation can be lost into poverty because of the response that our state has had to this pandemic, and I would say our country has had to this pandemic. The issues that people are facing now are not just simple and one-sided. They are complex. People who have not been able to pay their rent or their car payments or their electricity payments for months are now finding these bills are coming due just before the holidays. And what are they supposed to do? We have to tackle these issues. They're not issues that are partisan. They're not issues that only affect some. They're issues that affect a large majority of the population. And at the same time, our employers, our small businesses and middle-sized businesses are also seeing the stresses in their own ability to rehire employees, and employees who have severe amounts of debt and are unsure of where they're going to get their next paycheck. And so we have to be able to tackle these issues. Fortunate for us, you know, the conversations that Democrats have been having in this state and many others have focused around increasing and expanding Medicaid, right? I don't think that that's as huge of a partisan issue now, based on how many people are in dire need of healthcare benefits. I don't think that the conversation around increasing our minimum wage is one that's going to be met with much resistance in the next sessions in the state capitol, because no one can recover from this pandemic making $8 and some odd cents an hour here in the state of Florida. It's just not going to happen. And so some of these issues, hopefully, will see the light of day in the next session here in the Florida State House. And I'm telling you, you know, my background's in messaging. I'm the regional press secretary for the Sierra Club's Be On Call campaign. I manage all of our media strategy in Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, and here the great state of Florida. And I can tell you, the messaging for Republicans to be against these issues is not there. The political will and their constituents being behind them on that is not going to be there, and we just need to push them on it. And like the segment says for today's call, be unapologetically progressive and hold people accountable for these actions and these issues. And so that's what I'm about to do, and I look forward to having a conversation with all of you here. But those are the issues that matter to my constituents, Democrat, Republican, or independent. And those are the ways that I talk about the issues. I don't talk about them in a partisan way. I talk about them in a relatable way because my family, for the most part, is Republican. And so I have these conversations around the dinner table every night. And that's what I want to have with the American people and the people of my district here in South Florida.
Thanks, Ricky. Really appreciate it. Ricky, Luisa, Ben, Nancy, if y'all want to turn your cameras on, we'll get this party started with the Q&A part. Excuse me. And you can see my cat running through the background. All right, y'all, the first question I'm gonna ask, y'all represent sort of like a bunch of different offices, broad swaths of the state of Florida. What are the things that people are talking to you about right now? Is it COVID? What are the, when you go out or when you get on the phone and you talk to voters, when you're at the polls, what are the primary things that folks are talking to you about in the areas that you're running in? Whoever, I'm just gonna let y'all jump in as you want to. So whoever wants to take this first. Looks like Nancy wants to jump in.
Yeah, so I'm running in a super local race, and some people may not find that sexy enough. And so I always have to find myself relating national coverage or national policies, et cetera, to making it very super local. First and foremost, my campaign or election is nonpartisan. So the first thing people ask are you a Democrat or you're a Republican, right? And so the best way I shift or I don't tell my affiliation is really talk about what my values are, and they kind of understand. And from there, folks continue the conversation or they don't, or they don't continue the conversation. And so what has really been on both sides, what I've really been able to do to tie both parties together is talk about the environment. Some people may feel like it's a hoax. Some people may feel like it isn't. But when I talk about gas prices, the prices of food going up, not being able to travel and the fluctuations between their utility bills, it hits home. It's like, oh yeah, why is that? And when I talk about, hey, clean air, our city, as I mentioned before, just suspended recycling and they're going into waste energy. Now for folks out there, waste energy is just a fancy way of saying incineration. And with COVID, being an issue and us not knowing the long-term impacts of COVID, we all know it impacts our respiratory issue. Don't think it's smart for us to burn trash right now because of the public health impacts. So me tying that in, they're like, oh, I did not think about that. Now I no longer care about what party you're affiliated with. This is directly impacting my day-to-day life. So again, my seat may not be the sexiest, but being able to tie everything together and making folks understand that, yes, I do understand national politics is important, but your local candidate will make or break you, right? This will basically impact your pockets directly. And if you take this lightly and just bubble anybody in, you'll be paying for it for the next 4 years, literally and figuratively.
I'll
That's gonna
jump
be
in.
tough to follow. Yeah, someone's got to do it.
I mean, I'm not trying to follow it in the sense of trying to do it better, because there is no better than Nancy on these issues. I as well have the environment as one of my top priorities and top issues. You have to understand that there's a lot of politicians that talk a good talking point game when it comes to the environment, but there are not as many who are equipped and ready to go on day one to be able to tackle these issues. And I can tell you from experience working with Nancy, Nancy is one of those people that can tackle those issues on day one. And being a local elected official will only make it much more valuable to her community when it comes to responding to a lot of these issues. I will say, running for local office or running for a down ballot seat is much more important to people in their everyday lives. I say this to people all the time when I talk to them. You're focused on Congress, you're focused on the presidency, but those seats do not impact your daily life as rapidly, right? Look at the stimulus plan and how long it takes to pass it and then have it show up on your doorstep. The issues that we talk about, expanding Medicaid, going into session and passing laws that then 2-3 months later are already enacted. Some of the things that we shift, some of the things that we plan are things that will impact you the next day. I talk to people all the time about, my opponent, one of the things that he pushed in the last session was making it harder for hospitals to be able to charge Medicaid for services rendered to their Medicaid customers. Something as mundane as that on its face, you don't think too much about. But when you're talking to people who go to the hospital or go to a doctor and get rejected because they're on Medicaid, and those doctors or those hospitals don't take their Medicaid, that's a problem, and that's a state issue. A lot of these issues people don't realize are state issues. When you look at Big Sugar and the horrible things that they've done to our environment and to our Everglades, those are state issues. There is a state environmental protection agency that deals with these matters. Our air quality and our water quality divisions within the state departments are the ones who take care of these issues and are the ones who are going to be the first ones to respond. And so we have to talk to people in that way. We are the first line of defense. And we're the first line of thinking outside the box, especially when it comes to climate change.
Well, I'll go ahead and hop in. So, a big issue in our district is that of crumbling infrastructure. Jacksonville, for many reasons, some of them cultural, some of them actually real financial, has really struggled to invest what needs to in its infrastructure to really prepare itself for the sea level rise that's coming. We also have a tendency to kind of rush to short-term solutions, in spite of long-term stability here. It's kind of an issue we're facing nationwide at this point right now culturally. There's a lot of rush to political expediency, and it comes on both sides. I would say progressive ideals by nature are the ones that deal with long-term consequences, but I think there's certainly this kind of cultural push right now to have to produce results immediately for folks, and it puts a lot of pressure in terms of trying to make those kind of short-term versus long-term decisions that they're going to have to make, especially in a place like the state legislature. And so, infrastructure is a huge issue here, as it is in most parts of Florida. Jacksonville is going to be one of the most expensive places in the country. We're talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars to get it ready for sea level rise, what we're going to see. So it's a big issue here. Public education, making sure there's actually the dollars there to support the mandates from the state to deliver that high quality education that's required in our state constitution to all of our kids here. There's for-profit charter schools they're nonprofit charter schools, but they're managed by for-profit companies and are housed on property that's owned by for-profit developers. That's a big thing that's really gotten their talons in here in Jacksonville and kind of really sucking out a lot of public dollars from the system. So there's a number of issues there that I think are really kind of, again, this is why corruption is such a big issue for me in general. And I use it kind of as a broad term, but it, kind of goes from everything from the real kind of behind the scenes fraudulent, ridiculous behavior that happened, right? They recently just tried to purchase JEA, which is a municipally owned utility here. There's a lot of funny business happening behind the scenes. Florida Power and Light has been purchasing up small and mid-sized publicly owned utilities across the state for decades. And they tried to buy Jacksonville, and few local folks got stuck with their hands in the cookie pot, and now things are going down, for them. But really making sure that we can root out anything from that level of kind of real corruption to the kind of more broad, money comes in on one end, but then it goes through 8 different channels before it comes out the other, and nobody really knows what's happening, where money's coming from and where it's going to, and it really adds to a sense of distrust. So, that's what we're really focused on here. An issue that has really resonated with folks is this idea that I want to form basically advisory boards made up of people in the district to help me actually craft legislation that I'll then go ahead and introduce. And the idea is to really go through this exercise of including people in the process and being as transparent as possible to try and restore trust in the system. So. Oops.
Thanks, y'all. Why don't we go next? We have a question from someone who dropped in the Q&A, Britton. I'm sort of going to combine this with another question I wanted to ask, which is things have changed a lot over the last, since March. How have y'all been adapting to talking to voters, especially since so many of y'all are in really hyper local races? How have y'all adapted to talking to voters? I think Luisa and Lauren, if y'all want to start talking about sort of y'all's general thoughts on that.
I can jump in. So the great thing about being a first-time candidate is that you get to really think about what makes common sense and not just what is done and has been done for a long, long time. And I think that campaigning in a time of COVID also made so many people kind of question why we do the things we do. And so I basically told my team, and of course, I work with a campaign professional, but I always kind of push back and say, well, as a constituent, these are my behaviors. And so is what you're suggesting, does that align well with how I as a constituent would receive that information, right? And it's allowed us to reach, I think, an interesting middle ground where, of course, we've done some of the traditional points of contact like mail pieces, and of course, phone banking, very important. We continue to do that. But we've gotten really creative about our texting and how we target voters in different areas with very specific messages that actually matter to them because it's something so specific to either where they live or what they do or what they care about. And so that's been a really awesome way. Of course, boosting a lot more digital and getting creative, just having fun. I know when I'm scrolling, what catches my attention, and really just coming from that place of what is important, what is useful information, and how do we present it in a easily consumable manner that is shareable too. And thinking through that exercise has been so helpful in creating a really strong social media presence, which organically then gets us a lot more eyes. And then, of course, hosting many Zooms, meet and greets, and online discussions, which technology has allowed us to include a much larger group of people than I think we would have if we were doing those only in person.
Yeah, and if I could add to what Louisa's saying there, I mean, I think when you think of, most people think of the quintessential image of someone running for office, it's a person out there shaking hands and kissing babies, right? It's that in-person contact, it's meeting people. But I think what COVID has really emphasized is not just meeting people, it's meeting people where they are. And it's the candidates who, like Luisa said, have really been able to innovate and say, all right, we're in a totally different set of circumstances. Where are my constituents now? Or not even my constituents as a whole, but different groups of them. And what's the best way that I can connect? And for some of them, that's going to be text. For others, it's going to be by phone. And one thing we've been consistently hearing is that there are just higher rates of people picking up the phone over the last several months and actually engaging in conversation because people are at home, and it's also online. And while I think there was a rocky transition in those first couple months as people thought, well, how are we going to interact in this environment? And particularly, how are we going to raise money for campaigns at a time when so many people are financially challenged and just trying to make ends meet? We slowly saw a shift through, spring into summer, into people really recognizing the opportunity of this moment to convene groups of people who never would have been in the same physical room together in a virtual space. And for an organization like mine, and I'm sure like Run for Something, Ross, what we've seen is that it's a great way to really amplify local races and bring national attention to them. Because someone who lives in New York or California or Chicago, who's really interested in education policy, is never going to physically be present at a fundraiser for Luisa in Miami-Dade County, but they can be in a Zoom room and they can get excited about that race, and then they can get 10 more of their friends, and the snowball effect can go out. So when I think about the future, I don't think we're going back to just shaking hands and kissing babies. I think this is a new era for campaigning, and those candidates and those organizations that have best been able to innovate and adapt, which not surprisingly, I think have been progressive organizations. Those are the ones who are going to be winning races in the future.
Awesome. Thanks so much, y'all. All right, we're running up on our time, but I want to get one more thing in basically like a couple of tweets. Like, what is the thing that's giving you hope right now? What's getting you, like, from now until election weeks? Who wants to jump in? Someone.
I'll jump in. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
No, I don't want to take the spotlight like that. You go ahead, Nancy. Go ahead, Nancy.
I'm looking forward to a vacation. I have booked a vacation for 2 weeks, and I'm going to go off the grid, win or lose, and I will deal with everything afterwards. So that is what's giving me hope.
I love that answer, and I'm not gonna lie, if that's definitely something that's keeping me going too. I cannot wait. We're thinking we may go up into the mountains in North Carolina and do the super fall thing. I grew up in Chicagoland, so like I'm missing the seasons. Like up here in Jacksonville, we sort of get the seasons, but it's not really. Yeah, but I mean, to be perfectly honest, I've been doing a lot of last minute lit drops and these sorts of things, right? And I'll catch people outside and we'll have these conversations, and we're hitting a lot of Republican and MPA doors because this is a hard district. We got to do it. And I'm having conversations with folks who are legitimately ready to see something different. And I think it's really fascinating. As someone who's been engaged in politics for a long time, you kind of enter into this bubble, and even if you're the most aware person of being in that bubble, right, and understanding that there's all these other people out there, you still exist within it. And so as a candidate, I managed a few campaigns. I managed a few campaigns over the course of my career, and actually state representative races. And so it's always a conversation that you have with the candidate is, oh, you got to get out there, you got to diversify, what you're talking to, and et cetera, et cetera. But when you're the actual candidate, it's been a fascinating experience. So it really gives me hope is that there are people out there who are really willing to vote for person over party, as long as you just are really willing to be out there and be open and honest with them.
Who do we got next? A couple tweets.
So what's giving me hope right now is candidates like these. I look out at this group, I listen to them, and I see not only the future of our party at a state level, but the future of our party nationally. And this just makes me, realize that when we're talking about this election, it's not just about winning the presidency in 2020. It is about all of the power that we are creating at all levels of government, and how that's going to pay off in the future. So that's what's given me hope for the next 2 weeks.
I've definitely had moments in the last few weeks, and I know they'll come in waves, where I've had to dig deep and really root myself in why I'm doing this. And so that's what's giving me hope, all those reflective moments of really just discernment of remember your why, and remember that you're doing this for the 8-year-old undocumented Luisita sitting in a classroom today. And my hope is really what I'll be able to do, which are so many little common sense things that I think school board members could be doing today that I'll be able to do hopefully in a few weeks. And I will also second what Ben said, really having conversations with people who are probably voting not the way I would vote, and yet will talk to me and we can find common ground, and we'll say, well, we're going to support you because we believe in what you're building, and that's been powerful to experience on the ground in these times.
Ross, I'm so sorry. I feel really bad. Everyone gave some really great examples, and I said vacation, but something came to mind though. When I'm talking to folks in these long lines, and people are just like, yeah, I heard of you, and give me a hug, even though in the midst of like 6 feet apart, and they're like, thank you, you've inspired me. It's about time. Like, those words mean so much, and it keeps me going. I'm like, yes, no, not everybody hates me right now, right? So that is what's giving me hope that people really want change in my city.
Yeah, and for me, a little bit along those lines, today my sister texted me with a screenshot of my Instagram account where a person who was in line and talked to me briefly and took my literature told me that she and her mother voted for me, but what they thought was most impactful was the way I responded to a woman in front of them who said not so many nice words to me about being a Democrat. And you could all understand that there are many things that a woman wearing a cowboy hat with the name Trump on it would say to someone like me. But the fact that a voter who doesn't know me personally would go onto my social media and give that account did make me cry, I have to be honest. But it shows you, and I'm gonna give you a little nudge here, Lauren. It shows you how much more like America we really are when we show up and run for office, because it shows people like us that we do matter. I say this to people all the time, and unless I say it, a lot of people don't automatically assume it, which I have to work on. But I am a proud, openly gay Cuban American Democrat running on the west side of Miami, which is not something that's easy to do when all of the west side of Miami has Republican representation. So just sit there with that for a second. But on the tweet, and I'm going to tell you guys a secret. So what I'm going to do after this election, and what I'm looking forward to, not a vacation, but to Hallmark and Lifetime holiday movies. I just want to get to a point where the narrative is simple. There's a happy ending, maybe a romance, some baked goods and some hot chocolate and some family time with family that might be Republican and might have voted for Trump. And to get us to reconcile and get back to the things that matter to us, which is togetherness and being together and appreciating each other over the holidays. And so that's the tweet. I can't wait for after this election to put on that Spotify holiday playlist that I might or might not have already started just to make myself feel better in this GOTV home stretch. But that's the tweet. Retweet and share that.
I love it. And Nancy, vacation was a totally sufficient answer. There's nothing wrong with it. My quick answer is y'all and voters. I said in Florida, over 30% of the electorate from 2016 has already voted. In Texas, that number is over 50%. Around the country, that number is ranging between 30 and 40% generally. It's fucking awesome. Y'all are out there doing the Lord's work. And so appreciate that y'all decided to step up and run for something. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Really appreciate y'all taking some time out of your schedules to do this, especially so close to Election Day. I want to close out, with, this is our last in this series. Really thankful to our partner, More Like America and Lauren. You should definitely go to their website and donate. You should also, I also got to do my own plug. You should also go to runforsomething.net/build and donate. You should donate to all of these candidates on the call. Actually, though, probably at this point, what is the most important thing is you should volunteer for them. Every one of them probably needs people to make phone calls, send text messages, etc. So definitely do that. We'll be sending out information. I'll be sending out information after this call with everybody's info so that you can sign up on their websites. Thank you so much again. Really appreciate it. Thank you for bearing with me as we went a little bit over time, and have a lovely evening, everyone.